Good evening. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, December 5th, 2016. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for the English edition of ORAN News, where we bring you today's top stories translated into English every weeknight. U.S. Ambassador Donald Liu participated in the Anti-Corruption Symposium, where he declared that the judicial reform is being hindered by corrupt judges and politicians. The ambassador also expressed his belief that corrupt politicians from both the right and left-wing parties will be held responsible before justice. The ambassador declared that the success of the judicial reform, especially of the special prosecution against the Bureau of Investigation, will depend on the expectancies of the citizens. In Albania, every family has a story to tell about how corruption has touched their lives. In July, the Assembly passed the constitutional amendments to create the special structure on anti-corruption and the National Bureau of Investigation. For the first time in Albania's history, these new institutions will provide an independent investigative and prosecutorial capacity to catch organized crime bosses and corrupt senior officials. They will do this with the support of the United States government. But this only works if the people of Albania have high expectations and demand results from these new institutions. You should expect many of Albania's drug dealers and organized crime bosses will go to jail. You should expect that senior corrupt politicians from the right and the left will face justice. And more importantly, you should expect that drug dealers, organized crime bosses, and corrupt politicians, judges, and prosecutors will be afraid. We see evidence that these people are already afraid and are trying to fight back against this reform. Because of their fear, they are inventing stories and telling lies about the EU ambassador, Euralius, and the Constitutional Court. The court has already sent a revised translation to the Venice Commission, and none of the translation differences were substantial. All major political parties have put their faith in the judgment of the Venice Commission. We look forward to its opinion to help guide Albania in its implementation of judicial reform, declared the U.S. ambassador. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, who was also present at the symposium, declared that the successes Albanian people expect in the fight against corruption cannot be reached without the judicial reform, but stated his skepticism about whether the Constitutional Court will follow the Venice Commission's judgment about the vetting law. Albania will have its parliamentary elections on June 18th of 2017. President Nishani has set June 18th as the parliamentary election date. The president's decree reads, based on Articles 92 and 93 of the Constitution of the Republic of Albania, and based on Article 9 of the Law on Electoral Code, I decree June 18th as the date when parliamentary elections will be held. The president's decree comes at a time when the political parties have not yet made any requested changes to the Electoral Code. A gruesome event took place this morning in Korça in southeastern Albania. A 41-year-old father hung his two boys, aged 4 and 6 years old, and then himself. The 3 victims were discovered this morning inside their home by the grandfather of the young boys. Naum Toshi hung his 2 young children, 4 and 6 years old, and then himself after an argument between himself and his wife, who had already left the house. It is also learned that Toshi had written a letter a few moments before the crime, which he had placed on the door of the 2-story house where he had lived with his children. Come upstairs was written on the letter found by Naum's father, the grandfather of the 2 young children. The grandfather entered the house where he found his son and his 2 grandsons hung in a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Toshi's sister said that her brother was in a depression after his wife had abandoned him, and she feels that this is why he committed the grave act. Neighbors declare that he and his wife had argued fiercely after the wife, who was living and working in Greece, had returned from Greece after midnight and wanted to take the children, but her husband did not allow her. After the debate, she left the house. It was after this that the 41-year-old man committed the shocking crime. Some police sources told an Ora News journalist that the 6-year-old boy was the woman's son from a previous marriage and that the 4-year-old was her son with Mr. Toshi. Ora News is strongly against such events and asks for citizens' understanding for not reporting the macabre details of this tragedy. The serious event, which took place in Korça, follows another domestic tragedy in Fier over the weekend, where a 50-year-old man killed his wife by throwing her from the bathroom window of their home. The two had just returned from Germany. They had been having constant fights until the fatal argument on Saturday, when he threw her out of the window. The wife died on her way to the hospital. The husband was arrested and confessed to the crime. A week before the murder, the woman had filed a lawsuit against her husband for domestic violence. The woman had asked for police protection. The Fier court had ruled in favor of the woman, and the protection order would have entered into force today, exactly 2 days after the murder. Currently, the criminal code provides that a protective order enters into force 10 days after the decision is made. After the two recent serious domestic crimes, the Minister of Interior announced the structures to report violence cases will be established. The minister criticized the politicians of inspiring violence with their language used in plenary sessions every Thursday. The minister called on politicians to be actively against violence. The Minister of Social Welfare and Youth criticized the courts for issuing soft decisions against abusers, declaring that punishments should be harsher against men who use violence in their homes. But to the Democratic Party chairman, the government is to be held responsible. According to the DP chairman, the governmental policies have impoverished the citizens. These events, more than individual crimes, reflect the poverty and despair our society has. The politicians have the main role in this. The government should stop working for only a few people and turn its attention to the problems of its citizens. We should not kill each other, but bad politics, declared the DP chairman. The public has been shocked by the 4 deaths due to domestic violence in these recent days, causing opinion to be concerned. The Parliamentary Economic Commission adopted the 2017 Fiscal Package today, together with 2 new taxes on gas and on luxury vehicles. The Fiscal Package was adopted with a few changes. The chairman of the Economic Commission clarified that the tax on vehicles for the disabled was removed, the oil excess for the fishing fleet was removed, and the tax on gathering urban waste was reduced. The excise or duty tax on vehicular gas has been rejected by the Socialist Movement for Integration, and it was passed in the Commission without discussion. The chairman of the Economic Commission declared that the excise is still under discussion. The opposition members are against the fiscal package and did not participate in the voting. Democratic Party Chairman Lulzam Basha held a meeting with the citizens of the Has area. Mr. Basha listened to the people's concerns and said that the Democratic Party will offer solutions for poverty and unemployment and will take the country out of the difficult economic situation. Albania is going through dramatic times. Poverty and unemployment have deepened because of irresponsible politics, which have killed the hopes of Albanians, said Basha. According to the DP chairman, 50% of families receive 8,000 lek per month in economic aid. While the government is spending 850 million lek to make buildings look good, it is leaving the residents of this area with financial difficulties. Mr. Basha told the citizens of Has that the Democratic Party will change this reality, promising lower taxes, employment, and an increased budget for the needy. That's all for our English edition this evening. Please join us again Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m. for your local news in English. My name is Mari, and on behalf of Aura News, thank you and good night.